In the middle of the desert, half buried in red sand and surrounded by broken stones, the massive UFO rested like a sleeping giant. For hundreds of years, it had not moved, not even once. Generations of alien scholars and soldiers came to study it, but every attempt failed. They called it the Forbidden One, a relic too powerful to be touched, yet too mysterious to be ignored. The alien girl Lyra had grown up listening to stories of this ship. Her ancestors said it had swallowed kings whole, that it had once crossed the stars in a single breath, and that whoever controlled it could rule 1,000 worlds. But all those stories were useless, because no alien hand had ever made the ship come alive. Lyra stood near the massive silver hull, her heart beating fast as she watched another failed attempt. The best pilot of her people had just stepped back, sweating, angry, and humiliated. The ship had done nothing, not even a hum. Around her, the crowd of aliens whispered in disappointment. Once again, the relic had rejected them. The elders shook their heads, their long robes dragging across the sand as they declared, "It is not meant for us. Leave it." Guards moved closer, pushing the onlookers back, making sure no one dared to break the council's rules. To touch the UFO without permission was considered almost a crime. But that night was different. Among the visitors was someone who did not belong. A human pilot named James, a newcomer who had been helping in the desert outposts, repairing broken ships and cargo haulers. He had no noble blood, no special permission, and no reason to even be near the sacred craft. Yet his curiosity was stronger than his fear. He kept staring at the UFO, his eyes following the faint patterns carved into its hull. The strange lines glowed faintly under the moonlight, as if the ship itself was alive and waiting. Lyra noticed him. She frowned. Humans were not supposed to be inside the ruins. "Stay back," she warned, her voice sharp but curious. James gave a small smile and shrugged. "It's just a ship, right? Why does everyone act like it's a ghost?" His words made Lyra's stomach twist. To call the relic just a ship was blasphemy. She wanted to scold him, to tell him how many of her people had died trying to claim it. But before she could speak, James stepped closer. The guards shouted, their weapons raised, but James did not stop. He placed his hand on the cold metal. For a long second, nothing happened. Then the air shifted. A low hum rose from beneath the ground, making the sand vibrate. The alien crowd gasped as thin streams of light spread across the ship's body, glowing brighter and brighter until the whole craft shone like a rising sun. Lyra's mouth fell open. She could not believe what she was seeing. Her people had prayed, sacrificed, even spilled blood on this hull, but nothing had worked. And now a human, an outsider, had awakened it by a single touch. The guards panicked. "Step away," they barked, rushing forward, but their steps slowed as the ground itself trembled. The massive ramp of the UFO creaked and opened with a thunderous roar, sending a wave of dust into the night sky. For centuries, that door had remained sealed, a wall of metal that even the strongest explosives could not break. Now it had opened like it was greeting James. Lyra's heart raced. She felt torn between fear and awe. Part of her wanted to run, to escape this forbidden scene before the elders punished them all. But another part of her burned with questions. Why him? Why not her people? Her violet eyes followed James as he looked back at her, a mixture of confusion and excitement in his face. He whispered, "It feels alive." The council elders arrived quickly, their faces pale, their voices shaking. They shouted orders at the guards, demanding that James be pulled away from the relic. "The human must not enter," one cried. "He is not chosen." But the ship seemed to disagree. The lights inside the open ramp glowed warmly, almost inviting, as if it recognized him. Lyra could not ignore the truth. Something deep inside the ship had responded to James in a way it had never responded to any alien before. The guards grabbed his arms, dragging him back, but even as they pulled him, the lights inside the ship followed him, dimming when he was far, brightening when he was near. The crowd whispered in shock. Some shouted that it was a trick. Others cried that the end times had come. Lyra remained silent, her eyes fixed on James. He did not look like a warrior or a king or a prophet. He was just a pilot, an ordinary man from a distant world. And yet, he had done the impossible. When the guards finally forced the ramp closed again, the lights of the ship faded back into silence. The desert returned to darkness, and the UFO looked like a dead relic once more. The elders declared the event a dangerous accident, warning everyone to stay silent about what they had seen. But Lyra knew she could never forget. The image of the glowing ship responding to James was burned into her mind. That night, when the crowd had scattered and the guards stood watch over the relic, Lyra found James sitting by the edge of the ruins, staring at the stars. He looked restless, his hands still trembling from what had happened. She walked closer, her voice low. "Do you understand what you did?" He shook his head. "No," he admitted softly, "but it felt like the ship was calling me." Lyra's chest tightened. Something about his words felt true. The UFO had rejected her people for centuries, but in one moment, it had chosen a human. She looked at him with a mixture of fear, anger, and strange hope. Maybe the ancient stories had been wrong. Maybe the chosen one was never meant to be from her kind at all, and that thought frightened her more than anything else. The next morning, the entire alien city buzzed with whispers of what had happened. Everyone had heard the rumors. The forbidden UFO had awakened for the first time in centuries, and it had responded not to an alien commander, not to a priest, but to a human outsider. The elders of the council sat in their high chamber, their long faces shadowed with fear. They could not allow such a story to spread, yet every word spoken in the night had already traveled across the desert. Traders, soldiers, even children were repeating the same unbelievable truth. The human touched it, and it answered. James was brought before the alien council, his wrists bound by glowing cuffs. He did not fight, but his eyes were filled with defiance. Lyra stood nearby, forced to attend as witness. She could feel the weight of every stare around her, blaming her for even speaking to the human. The council leader, an old alien with pale skin and golden eyes, leaned forward and spoke slowly. "Human, what you did was dangerous. You interfered with a relic that does not belong to you. That ship is sacred, a weapon of the ancients. Do you understand the risk?" James looked around at the circle of alien faces, then shrugged. "All I did was touch it. You've been trying for years, right? Maybe the ship just needed someone not overthinking it." His words made several council members hiss with anger. One even slammed his fist on the table. "Mockery! He dares insult us in our own hall!" But others looked uneasy because they could not deny what they had seen with their own eyes. Lyra's heart pounded. She could see the fear in the elders' eyes. They were not only afraid of the ship, they were afraid of losing control. If a human could command the UFO, what did that mean for their empire? Their power? Their history? She kept silent, her hands folded tightly, trying not to draw attention. But her mind would not stop racing. Why him? Why now? The council leader finally raised his hand, silencing the room. His voice carried weight. This human must stay away from the relic. It is forbidden. He must not approach it again. The guards nodded, tightening their hold on James, but James only smirked, shaking his head. "You're scared of it, scared of me. Maybe the ship doesn't see you as worthy." His words cut through the chamber like a blade. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Then the council leader's voice grew sharp. "Silence! If you speak again, human, you will regret it. We will decide your fate." He turned to the others. "Spread the order. No one is to let him near the ruins again." The decision was final. James was dragged out of the chamber, his smirk replaced by a grim look. He knew he was now marked as a threat. Lyra followed him outside, her steps quick. She caught up with him in the stone courtyard. "Why did you speak like that?" she whispered angrily. "They could kill you for less." James glanced at her, his expression serious now. "Because it's the truth. That ship doesn't want them. It wanted me, and I think you know it too." His words made her chest tighten. She wanted to deny it, to tell him he was wrong, but the image of the glowing ramp opening for him refused to leave her mind. As the day passed, the tension in the city grew worse. Soldiers doubled their patrols around the relic. Priests prayed louder in the temples. The people whispered that a prophecy might be unfolding, one they had misunderstood for centuries. Some believed the ship had chosen a savior. Others believed it had chosen a destroyer. Either way, they agreed on one thing. The human was dangerous. Lyra's father, a stern officer in the alien army, confronted her that evening. His voice was cold as stone. "You must stay away from the outsider. He is cursed. If the council finds you near him again, even my rank will not protect you." Lyra lowered her head, but inside she felt torn. She had seen something her father refused to admit. The ship had called to James, and pretending otherwise felt like lying to herself. Meanwhile, James was kept under heavy watch. 2 guards followed him wherever he went, their weapons ready, yet his mind was restless. He could not stop thinking about the feeling he had when he touched the ship. It wasn't just metal, wasn't just technology. It felt alive, like it was waiting for him. He had flown dozens of ships in his life, but none of them had ever made him feel like that. It was as if the UFO had been asleep, waiting for him to arrive. That night, as the city lights dimmed and silence settled, James sat alone in his small guarded chamber. He whispered to himself, "Why me? What do you want from me?" He did not know if he was asking the stars or the ship itself. Across the city, Lyra lay awake, staring at the ceiling of her room. Her father's warnings echoed in her mind, but so did James's words. She could not shake the truth. Her people had tried for centuries, and all had failed. But one human had touched it once, and the impossible had happened. In the shadows of the council chamber, some elders met secretly. Their voices were low and sharp. "The human must be watched closely," one said. "If he goes near the ship again, it could be the end of us." Another whispered, "Or the beginning. Perhaps he is meant to guide us." But the leader's answer was final. "No, he will not touch it again. If he tries, he will not live to see another sunrise." The decision was made in secret, but destiny was already moving against them. Lyra woke before dawn, her chest heavy with decision. She knew what the council planned. She knew James's life was hanging by a thread. Yet deep inside, a spark of curiosity and rebellion grew stronger. She whispered to herself, "If the ship has chosen him, then I must know why." She did not yet realize how far this choice would carry her, or how much danger it would bring to both their worlds. But in her heart, she knew one thing. This was only the beginning. The city was sleeping, its tall towers quiet under the pale glow of the twin moons. Guards patrolled the ruins of the ancient UFO, their armor shining faintly in the cold night air. Most of them were bored, shifting their weapons lazily, because nothing had moved there for centuries. But hidden in the shadows, Lyra crept carefully, her cloak wrapped tightly around her. Her heart beat fast as she glanced over her shoulder. If her father or the council knew what she was about to do, she would be punished, maybe even cast out. But the thought of James being locked away while the ship called to him was too much to bear. James followed her quietly, his wrists no longer bound. Lyra had stolen the key from her father's chest and freed him, though she still couldn't explain to herself why she was risking everything. She only knew that the image of the glowing ramp, opening for James like a long-awaited friend, haunted her dreams. She needed answers. And deep inside, she suspected James needed them too. They slipped past the last guard, hiding behind a broken pillar until the soldier's footsteps faded. The UFO stood before them, massive and silent, its surface cold as stone. The moonlight glinted off the strange patterns carved into its hull, patterns that seemed to twist when looked at for too long. James stepped forward, his voice barely a whisper. "It feels like it's waiting for me." Lyra shivered. "Hurry," she said. "We don't have much time." She led him to the side of the ship where the ramp had once opened. James placed his hand on the same spot as before. For a moment, nothing happened. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Lyra felt doubt clawing at her chest. What if it had been a mistake? What if the ship had only reacted once by accident? But then the metal pulsed beneath his palm. A low vibration shook the ground, and the glowing lines returned, brighter than before. Slowly, the ramp opened again with a groan that echoed through the ruins. Lyra gasped, her hands trembling. James looked back at her with wide eyes. "It knows me." They stepped inside. The air was thick, smelling faintly of ozone and old dust. The walls glowed faint blue, lighting a narrow path that curved into the belly of the ship. Strange symbols pulsed on the walls, none of which Lyra recognized. James walked ahead, his steps firm, as though he had been there before. She followed, her eyes darting nervously, half expecting soldiers to storm in at any second. At the end of the corridor, they reached a chamber filled with empty seats and strange consoles. In the center was the pilot's chair, tall and sharp, as if it had been carved for a giant. The metal shimmered, waiting. James stepped toward it, his breath heavy. Lyra grabbed his arm. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "If you sit there, there's no turning back." James nodded. "I need to know." He lowered himself into the chair. The moment he touched it, the ship came alive. Lights flared across the walls, holographic screens appeared, and the floor vibrated with power. Lyra stumbled back, shielding her eyes as the whole chamber filled with light. James gripped the armrests tightly, his face frozen in shock. The chair adjusted itself, fitting his body perfectly as if it had been designed for him. Outside, the guards finally noticed. The ground trembled, lights beamed from the cracks of the ship, and a loud hum filled the night sky. The city stirred awake. Soldiers shouted, horns blared, and hundreds of eyes turned toward the ruins. "The relic is awakening," they cried. Inside, James felt his heartbeat sinking with the ship. The controls moved under his hands like living creatures, guiding him, teaching him. He didn't understand the symbols, but somehow he knew what to do. He pressed his palms forward, and with a sudden jolt, the UFO lifted from the ground. Dust exploded in all directions, blinding the guards outside. Lyra stumbled, grabbing onto a railing as the ship rose higher, its engines thundering like a storm. Her eyes widened with awe. "You're flying it!" she shouted over the roar. James clenched his jaw, sweat dripping from his forehead. "I don't know how, but it feels natural." The ship tilted forward, lifting into the sky like it had been waiting centuries for this moment. The guards panicked. They aimed their weapons at the glowing ship, but their shots bounced harmlessly off its shimmering shield. One soldier screamed, "It's alive again! Stop the human!" But no weapon could touch it. The UFO soared upward, shining brighter than the moons, as if declaring to the world that its true pilot had returned. Lyra's fear turned into wonder. She had seen many pilots before, trained since birth, struggling even with the simplest ships. Yet here was James, an outsider, guiding an ancient warship with no training, no preparation, only instinct. She realized then that this was no accident. The ship had chosen him. As they broke through the clouds, the stars spread out before them, sharp and endless. The controls lit up with strange maps, constellations Lyra had never seen before. James stared at them, his voice quiet. "It's showing me places far beyond your empire." His hands moved again, and the ship responded like it was alive, bending space around them. Lyra clutched her chest, her heart racing. She felt both terrified and exhilarated, as though the universe itself had just opened its secrets to them. Back on the ground, chaos erupted. The council elders shouted orders, demanding the army prepare to strike. "If the human controls it, he must be stopped," one roared. But deep down, even they knew the truth. The ship was unstoppable. Their greatest pilots had failed to even wake it, yet the human was soaring above them, untouchable. The fear in their eyes spread to the entire city. High above the world, inside the glowing cockpit, Lyra turned to James. Her voice trembled. "Do you understand what this means? You've done what no one in my people's history could." James shook his head, his eyes locked on the stars ahead. "I don't understand it yet, but I think this is only the beginning." The ship roared louder, as though agreeing with him. In that moment, Lyra realized that her life, her people, and even her entire world had changed forever. The forbidden UFO was no longer forbidden. It had a pilot now, and that pilot was human. The city did not sleep after that night. Everyone had seen the impossible. The forbidden UFO, long silent and untouchable, had risen into the sky under the hands of a human. The news spread faster than fire in dry grass. By dawn, soldiers stood lined at every street corner, their faces pale with fear, their weapons ready. The council chamber was filled with voices shouting over each other, and the elders struggled to keep control. For the first time in centuries, the alien empire was trembling, not because of an enemy army, but because of one man. James and Lyra returned the ship to the desert ruins before morning, but the damage was already done. Scouts, farmers, even children had seen the glowing craft in the sky. To silence so many witnesses was impossible. Now the elders had to face the truth. The secret could not be buried. They sat in a circle, their robes heavy, their expressions grim. The leader's voice shook with fury as he spoke. "That human is a danger to all of us. If he controls the relic, he controls our fate." Some elders agreed quickly. "We must seize him, destroy him, and lock the relic forever." Others hesitated. One old woman whispered, "Or perhaps he is meant to be the chosen one. The prophecy said the ship would awaken for one who comes from the stars, not from our blood." The council divided into two camps, suspicion and fear twisting the room. Meanwhile, James was hidden in a small underground shelter by Lyra. She had pulled him away from the UFO before the soldiers arrived, guiding him through forgotten tunnels. He sat on the cold stone floor, his head in his hands. "They're going to kill me, aren't they?" he asked, his voice heavy. Lyra knelt beside him, her eyes fierce. "Yes, if they can. But you have something they want, something they fear. They don't know whether to worship you or destroy you." James let out a bitter laugh. "Great, that makes me feel much better." He rubbed his temples, still shaken from the flight. His hands remembered the controls, the way the ship had almost guided him, but his mind was filled with confusion. "I don't even know why it responded to me. I'm just a pilot. I'm not special." Lyra looked at him sharply. "The ship disagrees. It chose you." Up above, the alien army prepared. The generals gathered their forces, their voices rising in anger. "If the human takes full control of the relic, we will be powerless. Our weapons, our fleets, they will be nothing compared to that ship." Soldiers were ordered to track James down. Patrols doubled. Scouts were sent into the desert, and the people were warned. Anyone hiding the human would share his punishment. Fear spread among the citizens. Some whispered that the human was a demon who would bring the Empire's end. Others secretly hoped he was a savior, someone who could break the rule of the elders. Shops closed early, families locked their doors, and the city fell into tense silence. Everyone was waiting to see what the council would do. That night, Lyra overheard her father speaking with the generals. She hid behind the door, listening to his deep, commanding voice. "The human must be captured alive. The council wants to test him, to see why the ship responds. But if he resists, we have orders to kill him." Lyra's blood ran cold. She clenched her fists, her heart breaking. Her father was loyal to the council, but he could not see what she had seen in the ship. She had felt its power, its strange connection to James. Killing him would not only be murder, it would be a mistake that could doom them all. She returned to James, her face pale. "They are coming for you. You can't stay here." James sighed. "Where can I go? Every soldier in this place wants me dead." He stood and faced her, his eyes steady. "I need to get back to the ship. It's the only chance I have. If they catch me without it, I'm finished." Lyra hesitated. She knew what that meant. If the army found them near the UFO, it would be war. Still, something inside her refused to abandon him. She nodded slowly. "Then I'll take you there." But as they made their plans, the council was already tightening its net. Messengers were sent across the desert to allied clans, warning them of the human threat. Huge banners were hung in the city squares, painted with the human's face, declaring him an enemy of the Empire. Some citizens spit at the posters, others stared at them in fear, and a few secretly whispered that maybe the council was wrong. In the army barracks, soldiers sharpened their blades and loaded their weapons, speaking nervously. One soldier muttered, "If he controls the relic, what chance do we have? Our fleets couldn't even scratch its hull." Another snapped back, "Orders are orders. We fight or we die." Their fear was clear, but their loyalty bound them to the council's will. The next morning, the generals gathered their men in the great square. The leader of the army, a towering alien with a scarred face, raised his voice so all could hear. "The human has defied our laws. He has touched what was never meant for his kind. He is not a savior. He is a thief, a danger to our people, a disease that must be cut out." The crowd roared, some in anger, some in fear, others in confusion. James, hidden in the shadows with Lyra, heard the words echo through the city. His jaw tightened. "So that's it. They've already decided what I am." Lyra touched his arm, her voice urgent. "Then prove them wrong. Show them what you can do. Show them the ship's true power." Above them, storm clouds gathered, dark and heavy, as though the heavens themselves were waiting. The city was now a place of fear and suspicion. Soldiers hunted the streets, the council plotted in secret, and the people whispered of prophecy. All of it centered on one truth. The forbidden UFO had awakened, and a human was at its heart. And deep underground, James and Lyra prepared to risk everything. The army feared him. The council wanted him destroyed. But the ship was still waiting. Its silent call echoed in his chest, louder than the threats around him. He knew he couldn't hide forever. The next move had to be his, and the entire empire would be watching when he made it. The night was heavy with silence, but beneath that silence, danger moved quickly. Lyra and James had planned to reach the ruins again before dawn, but something went wrong. As they slipped through the narrow passages of the old desert tunnels, James noticed the sound first, a faint metallic click, like boots on stone. He froze. Lyra sensed it too. Before either of them could react, bright lights exploded in the darkness. Alien soldiers stepped out from every corner, their weapons glowing. They had been waiting. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. Someone had betrayed them. She realized at once that someone close to the council must have revealed her actions. Her hands shook as she looked at James. His jaw tightened, his face hardening, but his eyes carried no surprise. He almost expected this. The lead soldier, tall and armored, stepped forward and raised his weapon. "The human will come with us. Do not resist." James clenched his fists. "You're making a mistake," he said firmly. "You don't understand what the ship is." The soldier sneered. "It does not belong to you. You are nothing but a thief." Two guards moved quickly, grabbing James by the arms. He tried to pull free, but their strength was overwhelming. The glowing cuffs snapped around his wrists once again, binding him in place. Lyra moved forward, her voice trembling. "Stop! He hasn't hurt anyone. The ship responded to him because it chose him." The soldiers ignored her. One of them pushed her back roughly. "Stay out of this, girl. You've already shamed your family by protecting him." Her heart ached at those words, but she stood her ground. She wanted to scream, to fight, but she knew she would only make things worse. The soldiers dragged James through the tunnels, the sound of his footsteps echoing on the stone floor. Lyra followed, powerless, her chest heavy with guilt. Outside, the desert was alive with movement. Dozens of soldiers waited with transports ready. The sky was glowing with the first light of dawn, and the massive shadow of the UFO loomed not far away. Its surface gleamed faintly, as though it sensed what was happening. James turned his head toward it, his eyes locking on the silent ship. And in that moment, Lyra saw something. Connection, longing, almost like the ship itself was watching him. The council was waiting in the great square. Elders stood tall, their robes glistening with golden threads, their faces cold and stern. Citizens filled the edges of the square, their voices whispering, their eyes curious and afraid. They wanted to see the man who had done what no alien could. Some looked at James with awe, others with hate, and many with fear. The council leader raised his hand, and silence fell over the crowd. His voice rang sharp. "Here is the human who dared touch what was forbidden. He stole the honor of our ancestors, and he awakened a power that must remain in our control. For this crime, he will stand trial." James stood tall despite the cuffs. His voice was calm but carried through the square. "I didn't steal anything. The ship answered me. If you can't accept that, it's not my fault." His words stirred the crowd. Murmurs spread quickly. Some whispered that he was lying, but others said they had seen it with their own eyes. The council leader's face tightened in anger. Lyra stepped forward from the line of guards. Her heart pounded, but she couldn't stay silent anymore. "He speaks the truth," she shouted, her voice breaking the stillness. You all saw the sky light up. You saw the ship rise. He did not force it. It chose him." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The elders turned their sharp gazes on her, their eyes burning with fury. One snapped, "Silence, child. You betray your blood by speaking for this outsider." But Lyra didn't step back. She looked at the people, her voice louder. "For centuries, we have tried and failed. Our greatest warriors, our wisest scholars, all rejected. Why? Because maybe the ship was never meant for us. Maybe it was waiting for him." The guards moved toward her, but the murmurs in the crowd grew louder, harder to ignore. Some nodded, others whispered in agreement. Fear cracked into doubt. The council leader saw it and raised his hand for silence again. His voice thundered. "Enough! This human will not divide us. He is no savior. He is a threat, and threats must be destroyed." The soldiers pulled James toward the platform where judgment was carried out. Lyra's throat tightened. Her nails dug into her palms as she fought the urge to throw herself at them. James looked at her as they forced him forward, his eyes calm despite the danger. He gave her a small, almost defiant smile, as if to say he was not afraid. That only made her heart break more. The ship remained silent, but everyone in the square felt its presence. It loomed in the distance, casting a faint shadow over the city, as if it was waiting for something. The crowd's whispers grew restless again. If the relic truly had chosen the human, would punishing him bring disaster? The thought flickered in their minds, though few dared to speak it aloud. Lyra's father appeared among the guards. His face was as hard as stone, his voice filled with disappointment. "You have brought shame upon me, daughter. To side with this human is to spit on your ancestors. Leave now, or I will not protect you when judgment comes." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steady. "Then don't protect me. I won't abandon him." Her words struck like a blade, and for the first time, her father's eyes showed a flicker of pain. The soldiers forced James to his knees, chains clattering. The council prepared to announce their sentence. Around them, the air grew tense, the crowd leaning forward, holding their breath. Lyra's fists tightened. She knew the council would not spare him. And deep in her heart, she felt it. The ship would not stay silent much longer. As the leader raised his staff, ready to declare James's fate, the ground beneath them trembled faintly. Dust shook loose from the stone pillars, and a low hum drifted through the air. The people gasped, turning their heads toward the desert. The UFO's glowing lines pulsed, faint at first, then brighter, as though it had heard the council's words and was responding. James lifted his head, a strange calm in his eyes. "It knows," he whispered. Lyra's breath caught in her chest. The betrayal was complete, but the trial had awakened something far greater. The ship was not going to stay asleep while its chosen pilot was in chains. The council leader's staff had not yet touched the stone when the hum grew louder. The sound rolled through the city like thunder, shaking windows and rattling doors. Everyone in the square froze. The guards holding James tightened their grip, their eyes darting toward the horizon. Lyra's heart pounded as she looked at the glowing lines crawling across the hull of the ancient UFO. The ship was awakening, and this time it was not waiting for anyone's permission. The crowd gasped as the ship's ramp unfolded with a deep metallic groan. A column of bright light shot upward into the sky, painting the dawn in blue fire. The people stumbled back in fear, some falling to their knees, others covering their ears as the humming grew into a roar. Soldiers raised their weapons, but their hands shook. For the first time, they looked powerless. The elders shouted over the chaos, "Hold your ground! Do not let the human near it!" But the ship did not listen to them. The light from the ramp stretched out, wrapping around James like invisible hands. The guards tried to pull him back, but their strength failed. His chains rattled, glowing red, then cracked apart as if they were nothing. James staggered forward, his body bathed in the strange blue light. The people gasped, whispering, "It's calling him." Lyra rushed forward too, her breath quick, her heart racing. She reached his side as the ramp lowered completely. The hum shook her bones, but she did not stop. "James?" she shouted, grabbing his arm. His eyes glowed faintly in the light, his face filled with both fear and wonder. "It wants me," he said softly. "It knows I'm in danger." The soldiers surrounded them, but none dared step closer to the ramp. Their weapons sparked uselessly when they aimed at the ship. The council leader raised his staff, shouting, "Stop him! If he enters, all of us are doomed." But before the guards could move, the light pulsed again, blasting outward in a wave. Everyone was thrown back, elders, soldiers, citizens, all hitting the ground with cries of shock. Only James and Lyra remained standing, untouched within the beam. James stepped onto the ramp. Lyra followed without thinking. Inside, the ship came alive the instant he crossed the threshold. Symbols lit across the walls, glowing like stars. The floor trembled under their feet, and a voice, not words but feelings, echoed in James's mind. He gasped, clutching his head. Lyra grabbed him, panic in her voice. "What is it?" He breathed heavily. It's talking to me. Not with words, with images." Visions flashed before him, fleets of ships crossing galaxies, ancient battles fought in silence, and then long ages of sleep. The UFO had been waiting, searching for the right pilot. James stumbled into the cockpit, and the chair rose to meet him. His hands gripped the controls, fitting perfectly as though they had been made for him alone. The ship's power surged, filling the chamber with blinding light. Outside, the city shook. The UFO lifted slowly from the desert, its engines howling like a storm. Dust swirled in waves, throwing soldiers off their feet. The people screamed, some praying, others fleeing through the streets. The council elders watched in horror as the craft rose higher, a living god in the sky. "This cannot be," one cried. "No human should hold such power." Lyra held on tightly inside as the ship broke through the clouds. She looked at James, his face glowing with determination. "You're controlling it again," she whispered. He nodded, though sweat dripped down his face. It's not just me. It's guiding me. It wants to show me what it can do. His hands moved across the strange glowing controls, and instantly, the ship spread a shield over the entire city, shimmering like a dome of glass. Panic exploded below. Soldiers fired at the shield, but their blasts fizzled out. The crowd shouted in terror and awe. For centuries, they had called the UFO forbidden, a cursed relic. Now it hovered above their homes, alive under the command of a human. The council ordered their fleet into the air. Dozens of alien ships lifted from the hangars, swarming like angry insects. They surrounded the UFO, their weapons aimed. The generals shouted over the comms, "Bring it down before it destroys us all." But James felt the ship react. Without him pressing anything, its defenses activated. A wave of energy pulsed outward, and one by one, the alien ships froze in the sky, their engines shutting down, their weapons dark. Not a single one exploded, not a single life lost. They were simply disabled, drifting helplessly. Lyra's eyes widened. It disarmed them without killing. James swallowed hard. It doesn't want to destroy, it just wants to protect. His words sent a shiver down her spine. The UFO was not just a weapon. It was something far greater. Down below, silence fell as the people saw their proud fleet hanging useless in the air. Their strongest weapons had been reduced to toys in an instant. Fear turned to awe. The whispers started again. The ship has chosen him. He is the pilot of destiny. The council, however, refused to bow. In the square, the leader shouted until his voice broke. He is a danger. He will enslave us all. But even his own guards looked uncertain now. They had seen the ship spare them when it could have destroyed them. They had seen its light shield the city rather than crush it. Doubt crept into their hearts. Inside the ship, James leaned back in the chair, breathing heavily. "It's too much," he whispered. "I can feel everything, every circuit, every weapon, every system. It's like it's alive and I'm part of it." Lyra touched his shoulder, her voice gentle. "You're not alone. I'm here. We'll face this together." Her words steadied him, and he managed a weak smile. The UFO hovered calmly, its shields glowing, its weapons silent. But everyone knew the balance of power had shifted forever. A single human, chained as a prisoner minutes ago, now commanded the greatest relic in their history. The Empire's armies were useless, the Council's words hollow. And as James sat in the glowing cockpit, the ship's voice whispered again in his mind. Not fear, not anger, but a promise. He looked out at the stars, his voice low but steady. "It's only just waking up, and it wants me to keep flying." Lyra's eyes shone with both fear and hope. The people below were divided, the council broken, but one truth was clear. The UFO had chosen its pilot, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The UFO hovered silently above the city, glowing like a second sun. Its shield shimmered across the sky, and its deep hum rolled like the heartbeat of something alive. Every citizen stared upward, their fear mixing with awe. Below, the council stood in shock, their voices broken, their commands ignored. They had lost control. What they called forbidden had now chosen its master, and that master was human. Inside the cockpit, James sat in the pilot's chair, his hands resting on the glowing controls. He was exhausted, sweat dripping from his face, but his eyes were steady. The ship's voice, wordless but clear, filled his mind with images of galaxies, endless journeys, and forgotten battles. He finally understood. This ship was not built to be a weapon of conquest. It had been built as a guardian, a protector. And now it had awakened because it sensed danger again. Lyra stood beside him, her hand gripping the rail. She watched the stars projected on the screens, feeling as if the entire universe was opening before them. Yet her heart was heavy. She knew her people would not simply accept this. The council would never allow a human to sit in the pilot's chair. Already, she could see soldiers below regaining their courage, their leaders barking fresh orders, pointing at the sky. The UFO's sensors showed her everything. Fleets mobilizing in nearby cities, war machines awakening, commanders calling for reinforcements. The council was desperate. James clenched his fists. "They'll never stop, will they?" he muttered. Lyra shook her head slowly. "They fear what they don't control. They would rather destroy you than accept the truth." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then James exhaled deeply. "Then it's time I give them a choice." His hands pressed against the controls, and the ship responded instantly. The shields stretched outward, shimmering brighter, covering not just the city, but the entire surrounding desert. A deep vibration rippled through the air, forcing soldiers and citizens alike to fall silent. The UFO projected a beam of light straight into the square. James's figure appeared as a hologram before the council and the people, his voice carried across the city. "I didn't come here to rule you," he said firmly. "I didn't take this ship from you. It came to me. It chose me. You've tried for centuries to command it, but it never answered. You call it forbidden because you feared its rejection. But I tell you now, it was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to protect." The crowd murmured, eyes wide, listening to every word. Some nodded, others still trembled. The council leader raised his staff, shouting, "Lies! Do not listen to him. He will enslave us." But his voice sounded weak compared to the deep hum of the ship. James looked directly at him. "If I wanted to destroy you, your fleets would already be gone. But they're not. I spared them because this ship doesn't want blood. It wants peace." Lyra watched the crowd carefully. She saw faces change, fear softening into doubt, doubt into belief. Whispers spread quickly. "He spared us. He could have killed us, but he didn't. Maybe he is the chosen one." The council leader's face turned red with anger. He screamed, "Seize him! Destroy the relic before it's too late!" But none of the soldiers moved. They looked up at the glowing craft, then back at their powerless leaders, and lowered their weapons. James felt the ship strengthen around him. It fed off the shift in belief, as though the acceptance of the people made its power grow. He closed his eyes, letting the vision of the stars fill him. He saw not just one empire, but a galaxy waiting beyond. The ship showed him worlds at war, lost colonies, and threats rising in the dark. He realized this was only the beginning. The UFO had not chosen him by chance. It needed him for something far greater. He opened his eyes and turned to Lyra. "This isn't just about your people anymore. It's about all of us. The ship wants me to lead it out there, beyond your borders." Lyra's heart pounded. She had dreamed of the stars since childhood, but now she saw the danger as well. If James left, would her people ever accept him as anything but a thief? Yet something inside her whispered that she had to go with him. "Then I'll come," she said quietly, her voice trembling but sure. "If this is destiny, it's not yours alone." James gave her a small, grateful smile. "Then we face it together." Outside, the ship pulsed once more, brighter than ever. The shields withdrew, but no attack followed. Instead, the UFO lowered itself slowly toward the square. Dust swirled as it descended, its ramp unfolding. James stepped out with Lyra at his side, the ship's glow following him like a crown of light. The people gasped, parting instinctively as he walked forward. The council leader tried one last time. His voice cracked with desperation. "He is a danger. Kill him before it's too late." But no one obeyed. The guards who once held James prisoner now lowered their weapons, some even bowing their heads. The citizens stepped closer, their fear turning into something else. Curiosity, hope, maybe even faith. James stood tall before them, his voice calm but strong. "I am not your enemy. I am not here to take your world. But the galaxy beyond is changing, and danger is coming. This ship chose me because it knew what was needed. You can fight me and fall, or you can stand with me and rise." The people murmured, their voices swelling into a roar of agreement. The council elders looked at each other in despair, realizing their power had crumbled. Lyra watched her father in the crowd, his face torn between duty and truth. At last, he lowered his weapon and turned away, unable to fight what was already decided. The ship's engines rumbled, calling to James once more. He turned to Lyra, his eyes shining with determination. "It's time." Together, they walked back up the ramp, the glow wrapping around them. The people watched in silence as the UFO lifted again, rising higher and higher until it pierced the clouds and vanished into the stars. The city stood still for a long time after, its people staring at the sky. They knew they had witnessed the end of an age and the beginning of something new. The forbidden UFO was forbidden no longer. It had chosen its pilot, and that pilot was human. And somewhere beyond the stars, a new story was waiting to be written.